Valoria had performed more than 900 xenobiological scans in her career, and not one of them had ever frightened her. That was why, when the two humans entered Laboratory Bay 7, she greeted them with calm violet light running through the thin bioluminescent threads beneath her fungal skin. The glow moved in soft, even pulses from her shoulders down to her long, delicate fingers, a signal of confidence among her species. Routine. Controlled. Scientific. The laboratory around her reflected that same confidence. White-blue lamps burned in perfect rows across the ceiling. Polished metal tables stood in symmetrical lines. Transparent specimen chambers hummed with quiet containment fields. Every tool had been sterilized, calibrated, and aligned according to Galactic research vessel protocol. Nothing was improvised. Nothing was uncertain. At least, not yet. Grow stood near the containment station, massive and silent. His dark gray body looked less like flesh and more like living stone, a muscular frame grown for impact, endurance, and threat response. His amber eyes moved across the chamber displays with patient discipline. To most species, Grow's stillness looked like boredom. Valoria knew better. Grow never relaxed. He simply waited at different levels of readiness. Across the room, Meridian prepared the secondary sample vessels. The aquatic researcher moved with slow, fluid elegance, their semi-transparent body filled with soft teal currents that swirled beneath the surface of their membrane. 4 crests rose from the back of their skull, each one pulsing faint blue-green light. Their movements were precise, almost ceremonial, as if even a routine scan deserved respect. And this was supposed to be routine. The humans had been selected from a volunteer pool attached to the vessel's cultural exchange program. Their species had only recently entered limited contact with non-hostile research authorities. Earth was still classified as a low-priority biological survey world, interesting but primitive, adaptable but not extraordinary. The 2 specimens had agreed to basic analysis in exchange for compensation, medical clearance, and access privileges. Neither of them knew that their blood, skin, and cellular structures were about to become the most important data ever processed aboard the vessel. The first human stepped forward with casual confidence. His name was Nolan. He wore a white protective suit that fit awkwardly over his athletic frame. The suit was designed by alien engineers who had studied human anatomy for only a few weeks, and the result was functional but uncomfortable. Nolan did not seem bothered. His dark hair was visible above the collar seal, slightly messy despite the sterile environment. His eyes moved across the laboratory with mild curiosity, as if he were touring a hospital wing rather than entering an advanced xenobiology chamber. Behind him walked Tisa. She moved differently. Where Nolan seemed relaxed, Tisa seemed attentive. Her golden brown hair was pulled into a practical braid, and her large eyes kept studying the chamber, the controls, the alien scientists, the sealed equipment, and the small warning symbols glowing on the glass walls. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone who had read the instructions and noticed there were gaps. Valoria liked that. Her threads brightened slightly as she turned toward them. "Welcome to Xenobiological Specimen Analysis Protocol," Valoria said. Her voice carried several tones at once, layered in soft harmony. "The procedure is non-invasive. We will acquire baseline cellular samples using low-intensity extraction lasers. You will feel no pain. The scan should take approximately 5 minutes." Nolan nodded before she had fully finished speaking. "So I just stand in there, right?" Tisa glanced at him, then back at Valoria. She had clearly listened to every word. Meridian's crests twitched once. "Yes. The chamber will collect exposed skin's cellular samples automatically. The system does not pierce tissue. It does not damage cellular structures. It only reads and extracts surface-level biological data." "Great," Nolan said. He stepped into the glass analysis chamber. The door sealed behind him with a soft pneumatic hiss. Inside the transparent cube, Nolan stood on the circular marker at the center of the floor. The white protective suit reflected the blue scanning lights above him. He looked relaxed, almost bored. To him, this was nothing more than a medical test performed by strange but polite aliens. Outside the chamber, Valoria placed her fingers over the crystalline control board. The machine recognized her touch instantly. Blue symbols awakened beneath the surface. Thin beams of light formed in the chamber walls, aligning around Nolan's body with mathematical precision. Displays rose from the workstation, filling with empty data columns waiting to be populated. Gro's amber eyes sharpened. Meridian paused beside the sample vessels. Tisa watched silently. Valoria initiated the scan. A soft hum spread through the laboratory. Inside the chamber, pale blue light moved across Nolan's exposed skin. It passed over his face, his hands, the small visible section of his neck above the suit collar. Microscopic extraction fields gathered fragments of cellular material with such precision that Nolan did not even blink. "Feel anything?" Tisa asked through the glass. "Nope," Nolan said. "Actually kind of relaxing." Valoria allowed a small pulse of amusement to pass through her threads. Humans often reacted strangely to advanced technology. Some feared it. Some challenged it. Some, like Nolan, treated it like a mildly interesting convenience. The first readings appeared. At first, they looked normal. Carbon-based cellular architecture. Water-dominant tissue chemistry. Protein encoding. Nucleic acid chains. Primitive but stable oxygen transport systems. Nothing surprising. Nothing dangerous. Nothing worth escalating beyond standard documentation. Then the second layer of data arrived. Valoria's threads flickered. Only once. A tiny shift from violet to orange. She leaned closer to the display. The machine continued processing. More sequences unfolded across the screen. Amino acid patterns. Replication markers. Stability maps. Molecular bonds arranged in configurations that matched no viable model in the Galactic biological archive. That was not unusual by itself. New species often produced unfamiliar patterns. But unfamiliar was not the problem. The problem was that Nolan's DNA was not merely unfamiliar. According to the scan, it should not have worked. Valoria adjusted the display and ran an automatic correction filter. The results remained the same. She ran contamination rejection. Same result. She checked calibration. Perfect. She requested a secondary molecular integrity sweep. The chamber responded instantly, gathering deeper structural data from the sample. The new readings were worse. Valoria's violet glow dimmed beneath a growing orange undertone. Gro noticed. His large head turned slightly toward her station. Meridian noticed too. The teal currents inside their body slowed, then tightened into narrower streams. Tisa noticed last, because unlike the others, she could not read Valoria's color shifts as emotional language. But she could read silence. "What is it?" Tisa asked. Valoria did not answer immediately. She stared at the data. The human male in the chamber stood alive, breathing, thinking, speaking, and smiling faintly through the glass. The screen said that was impossible. Nolan raised one eyebrow. "So," he asked, still casual, still unaware, "how am I doing?" Valoria's fingers hovered above the controls. For the first time in 900 scans, she did not know what to say. Valoria did not speak for 12 seconds. In most laboratories, 12 seconds meant nothing. A pause. A breath. A researcher reviewing data before making a statement. But in Laboratory Bay 7, among species trained to read silence as precisely as language, 12 seconds became a warning. Nolan still stood inside the analysis chamber, one hand resting casually against the smooth glass wall. The scanning light had faded from his face. The blue glow beneath the floor had dimmed into a faint circle around his boots. To him, the procedure looked finished. He had stepped into the machine. The machine had scanned him. Now the scientists were supposed to tell him whether his cells looked normal. But Valoria's hands were frozen above the crystalline controls. Her bioluminescent threads, which had glowed calm violet when the test began, now carried thin streaks of orange. Not panic. Not yet. But enough that Meridian stopped preparing the secondary containers and turned fully toward her station. Gro's amber eyes narrowed. "Valoria," he said, his stone-deep voice low and controlled. "Status." Valoria blinked all 4 compound eyes in sequence. She did not look away from the display. "The scan is complete." "That was not my question." The orange in her threads brightened. Nolan looked from Grow to Valoria. Is there a problem? No, Valoria said too quickly. Then she corrected herself. There is no evidence of equipment failure. That answer made the room colder. Tisa stepped closer to the chamber. Her eyes moved across the unreadable symbols flowing over Valoria's display. She could not understand the script, but she understood hesitation. She understood the difference between a doctor saying nothing is wrong and a scientist saying the machine is not broken. What does that mean? She asked. Valoria's long fingers finally moved. She pulled one glowing sequence into the central air and expanded it into a rotating lattice of genetic information. The projection unfolded above the workstation like a cathedral made of light, strands, markers, bonds, probability lines, and warning indicators pulsing around Nolan's sample. To answer that, Valoria said carefully, I must run confirmation. She initiated a secondary analysis. The chamber lights brightened again, and Nolan straightened as pale blue scanning beams passed across his skin a second time. Still painless, he said, trying to sound amused. No one laughed. The new data arrived faster than the first. Molecular stability. Replication tolerance. Protein folding predictions. Error correction behavior. Cellular survival probability. One by one, the numbers appeared. One by one, they refused to make sense. Meridian drifted closer, their semi-transparent body shimmering as teal currents swirled faster beneath their membrane. Their four crests pulsed once, twice, then settled into a rapid blue-green rhythm. That cannot be correct, Meridian whispered. Grow's gaze moved to the containment indicators. His thick fingers spread slightly over the emergency panel, not activating it, only preparing. Valoria ran the sequence again. Same result. She changed the model. Same result. She compared Nolan's sample to known carbon-based species. No match. She compared it to unstable pre-viability embryos from high-radiation worlds. Still no match. She compared it to extinct life forms, corrupted genome banks, failed laboratory organisms, and theoretical molecular simulations that had never produced a living adult. The system found partial similarities everywhere and viability nowhere. Valoria's threads shifted harder into orange. The cellular structure is functioning, she said, speaking more to herself than to the room. Respiration markers are stable. Neural support chemistry is stable. Tissue replication is active. Immune signaling appears functional. The organism is demonstrably alive. Nolan stared at her. I'm glad the machine noticed. Tisa did not smile. But? Valoria looked at her then. That was the first moment Nolan felt genuinely uneasy. Because Valoria's face did not express emotion like a human face. Her mouth did not tremble. Her eyes did not widen. Her posture did not collapse. But the color under her skin had become a warning. Orange burned through violet in thin nervous lines, like fire spreading through roots. But according to the molecular model, Valoria said, the organism should not maintain viability. Nolan frowned. Meaning? Meridian answered before Valoria could soften it. Meaning your DNA should not support life. The sentence landed with such clean brutality that even the machines seemed quieter afterward. Nolan looked down at his own hands, as if expecting them to flicker or dissolve. They did not. They looked exactly the same. 5 fingers. Pale skin under blue lab light. A small scar near his thumb from a childhood accident he barely remembered. He flexed them once. I feel alive, he said. You are alive, Valoria said immediately. That is precisely the contradiction. Tisa's voice lowered. Explain it in human words. Valoria drew in a slow breath through the fine vents beneath her jaw. Your species uses a genetic storage system that appears chemically unstable by galactic standards. The sequence density, mutation tolerance, replication mechanics, and repair behavior should produce catastrophic biological collapse. Cells should fail to copy themselves accurately. Proteins should misfold. Development should terminate before cognition. A body built from this instruction set should not reach adulthood. Nolan stared at her. The chamber suddenly felt smaller. But I did, he said. Yes. And billions of us did. Valoria's fingers stopped. For one sharp second, no one moved. The statement was obvious, almost childish. If Nolan was human and Nolan existed, then other humans existed too. But spoken aloud, it opened a door the alien scientists had not yet allowed themselves to look through. Billions. Not one anomaly. A species. Meridian's internal fluid darkened toward purple. We should test the second specimen. Tisa turned toward them. Me? Yes, Meridian said. If your genetic structure matches his, then this may represent a shared human baseline. If it does not, then the anomaly may be more complex. Gro's fingers hovered over the containment panel. Remove the male specimen first, he said. No simultaneous chamber occupancy until classification is established. Nolan looked at him. Classification as what? Gro did not answer. The chamber door opened with a soft hiss. Nolan stepped out slowly now, his earlier confidence muted. He no longer looked like a volunteer leaving a routine scan. He looked like a man who had been told his own existence had failed a test he never knew he was taking. Tisa met him at the chamber entrance. You okay? She asked. He gave a small, uncertain laugh. Apparently not supposed to be. That should have broken the tension. It did not. Valoria watched them both with growing focus. Two humans standing side by side in white protective suits. One scanned. One unscanned. Both breathing in the same sterile laboratory air. Both ordinary by every visual measure. And one of them had just produced biological data that contradicted the foundation of every textbook Valoria had ever trusted. Tisa stepped toward the chamber. Nolan caught her wrist gently. You don't have to. She looked at the alien researchers, then at the glowing machine, then back at him. If your scan was impossible, she said, we need to know whether mine is too. She entered the chamber. The door sealed behind her. Valoria placed her trembling fingers on the controls again. This time, before the lasers even activated, Gro armed the emergency containment field. Tisa stood inside the chamber with her hands relaxed at her sides, but Nolan could see the tension in her shoulders. She was trying not to show it. That was what made him more afraid. Nolan had entered the scan like a man stepping into a routine health check. Tisa entered like someone walking into a room where the walls had already whispered a warning. Her eyes moved from the blue-lit floor marker to the glass panels, then to Valoria's trembling fingers above the crystalline controls. Outside the chamber, the laboratory had changed. Nothing physical had moved. The same white-blue lights burned overhead. The same polished metal tables reflected the chamber glow. The same specimen containers lined the walls in perfect rows. But the calm had cracked. Every machine hum sounded sharper now. Every pulse of light from the displays felt like a countdown. Gro had armed the emergency containment field. Nolan did not know what that meant exactly, but he understood the way Gro stood beside the control station. The giant security specialist no longer looked like part of the room. He looked like a door about to close forever. Is that necessary? Nolan asked. Gro's amber eyes did not leave the chamber. Until classification is established, all unknown biological behavior must be treated as a potential vessel risk. Biological behavior? Nolan repeated. She's standing there. Yes, Gro said. That is the concern. Tisa heard him through the chamber speakers. Her expression tightened, but she did not step back. Valoria's threads flickered orange across her fungal frame. Tisa, the procedure will remain non-invasive. If you feel discomfort, speak immediately. Tisa gave a small nod. Run it. Meridian moved closer to the secondary station, their translucent body glowing unevenly. The teal currents inside them had begun turning purple at the edges, swirling in restless patterns. Their crests rose and flattened in small nervous motions, betraying what their voice tried to hide. Beginning comparative analysis, Meridian said. Valoria activated the scan. The chamber filled with pale blue light. Thin beams passed over Tisa's face, her exposed hands, the narrow line of skin above her collar. She did not flinch. The lasers moved with silent precision, collecting microscopic cellular traces and feeding them into the vessel's analysis core. For 3 seconds, nothing unusual appeared. Then the first genetic map unfolded. Valoria stopped breathing. The data did not match Nolan's. That should have been comforting. It was worse. Nolan's molecular pattern had looked impossible because it broke the known models in one way. Tisa's broke them in another. Her replication markers twisted differently. Her protein prediction lines failed at different points. Her stability maps collapsed under separate calculations. Her immune signaling structures appeared to correct errors before the system could identify where the errors began. 2 humans. 2 different genetic profiles. 2 separate impossibilities. Valoria ran the contamination filter immediately. Clean. She ran the equipment correction. Stable. She ran the comparison again. The same impossible map burned above the workstation. No, Valoria whispered. Meridian's crests snapped upright. Say the result clearly. Valoria's fingers moved faster across the controls. I am checking for sample interference. There is none, Meridian said, reading the side display. Their voice had lost its smooth, watery calm. The chamber is clean. The sequence is isolated. Gro's eyes brightened toward orange. Nolan stepped toward the glass. What's happening? Tisa looked out at him. For the first time, her careful control slipped. Nolan? He could not answer because nobody had told him anything useful. Valoria expanded the projection. Tisa's genetic sequence spread through the air beside Nolan's archived sample. The 2 luminous structures rotated together, side by side, like alien constellations pretending to be medical data. To Nolan, they were beautiful and meaningless. To the researchers, they were horrifying. Valoria pointed one long finger at the 2 maps. They are not the same anomaly. Meridian's internal fluid froze for a fraction of a second. Gro turned fully toward her. Clarify. The male specimen's DNA violates viability through instability thresholds, replication strain, and protein folding impossibility. The female specimen's DNA violates viability through a different structural pathway. Her markers suggest cellular function should fail through information conflict, immune overreaction, and developmental contradiction. Nolan swallowed. Human words. Valoria turned toward him, and the orange in her threads burned brighter. If his DNA says his body should collapse because the instructions are too unstable, she said, hers says her body should collapse because the instructions are too contradictory. Tisa stared at her through the glass. But I'm not collapsing. No, Meridian said. You are not. The chamber continued scanning. More data arrived. It did not repair the contradiction. It multiplied it. Tisa's cellular response readings showed adaptive behavior beyond the predicted limits of her own genetic map. Her immune markers shifted as if correcting invisible threats before they became threats. Her neurochemistry suggested plasticity far above the theoretical range for a species with her genome density. Her tissue repair models returned probability warnings, then rejected their own warnings, then requested a higher classification system the vessel did not possess. Valoria's screen flashed with a red symbol. Nolan had not seen that symbol before. Gro had. His massive hand came down over the containment controls. Emergency biological uncertainty threshold reached, he said. The glass chamber shimmered as a faint energy field appeared over its surface. Tisa looked around sharply. Did you just lock me in? For vessel safety, Gro said. Nolan moved forward. Open it. Gro did not move. Stand back. She didn't do anything. That has not been established. Nolan's voice hardened. She stood in your machine and breathed. Gro's amber eyes flashed brighter. That is exactly what your species appears to do in defiance of every known biological law. The words hit the room like a verdict. Tisa's face changed. Not fear. Focus. She looked at Valoria, then Meridian, then Gro. The chamber light reflected in her eyes as the impossible data continued scrolling around her. So now what? She asked. You're afraid because your machine doesn't understand us? Valoria's fingers froze. Meridian slowly turned toward Tisa. Nolan looked at her through the glass, suddenly understanding why she had been watching everything so carefully from the beginning. She was not just scared. She was thinking. And the more terrified the aliens became, the more clearly she seemed to see the shape of their mistake. The final scan completed. The blue light faded. The chamber displays confirmed the result in clean, merciless symbols. Tisa's DNA was impossible. Nolan's DNA was impossible. But not in the same way. Which meant this was not a damaged sample. It was not a broken machine. It was not one rare mutation hiding inside one unlucky volunteer. It was human biology. All of it. Valoria stepped back from the console as if the data itself had become dangerous. Meridian's body darkened with turbulent purple currents. Gro's containment field remained active around the chamber. Inside it, Tisa stood perfectly alive. Outside it, Nolan stood perfectly alive. And for the first time, the alien researchers understood that they were not looking at two impossible humans. They were looking at the edge of an impossible species. The containment field hummed around Tisa like a quiet accusation. It was almost invisible, nothing more than a faint shimmer bending the laboratory lights across the glass chamber. But Nolan could feel what it meant. A moment ago, Tisa had been a volunteer. Now she was a possible threat. Not because she had attacked anyone. Not because she had moved wrong. Not because she had even raised her voice. Because she was human. Nolan stepped closer to the chamber, ignoring the warning tone that pulsed from Gro's console. "Open it," he said. Gro did not turn. His thick fingers remained spread across the containment controls, and his amber eyes burned with hard orange light. "Negative. She is not dangerous. That has not been determined." Nolan gave a sharp laugh without humor. "You scanned her. She stood still. That's all she did." Gro finally looked at him. The massive security specialist's face was carved from dark living stone, unreadable except for the intensity in his eyes. "Your species appears to maintain life functions through biological structures that should fail under known molecular law. Until we understand how, every system aboard this vessel must assume unknown risk." Risk of what? Gro's silence was answer enough. He did not know. And that made him more dangerous. Inside the chamber, Tisa lifted one hand toward the glass. The containment field brightened where her palm came close, warning her not to touch it. She stopped before contact. "Nolan," she said quietly. "Don't make him panic." "I'm not the one panicking." Valoria flinched at the word. Her bioluminescent threads had lost their steady rhythm. Orange and violet chased each other beneath her fungal skin in broken patterns. She stood before the data projections, surrounded by two luminous human genetic maps that refused to obey anything she had been taught. Meridian moved beside her, their translucent body shifting from deep purple toward dark teal and back again. Their internal currents swirled too fast, as if their own body were trying to outrun their thoughts. "We need isolation," Gro said. "Both specimens. Separate chambers. Full biological quarantine. No physical contact with vessel personnel until command review." Nolan stared at him. "Specimens?" Tisa's eyes narrowed from inside the chamber. Valoria turned sharply. "Gro. It is the correct protocol. It is fear. It is survival." The laboratory went silent. That was the real fracture. Not the data. Not the machine. Not the impossible DNA floating in the air like a verdict. It was the moment when science and security stopped speaking the same language. Gro saw a threat without a shape. Valoria saw a discovery too large to name. Meridian stood between both possibilities, trembling with the weight of choosing wrong. Nolan looked from one alien to the next and realized something cold. They were not cruel. That was worse. Cruelty could be fought. Hatred could be named. But fear dressed as protocol could lock doors, erase rights, and call every step reasonable. "We came here because you asked for volunteers," Nolan said. "You told us this was safe." "It was," Valoria said, her voice strained. "Then open the chamber." Gro's hand moved slightly over the controls. The containment field strengthened. "No." Tisa inhaled slowly. Everyone noticed. The chamber sensors reacted instantly. Lines of biological data rushed across the displays: lung expansion, oxygen transfer, heart rhythm, neural activity, stress hormones. The system monitored her body like it was tracking an unstable reactor. She looked at the numbers, then at the aliens. "You're watching me breathe like it's an emergency." Meridian's crests lowered with something like shame. "We do not understand what sustains you," they said softly. Tisa's expression sharpened. "But you understand that I am alive." "Yes." "And you understand that Nolan is alive." "Yes." "And you understand that Earth is full of people like us." No one answered. That silence was the first real confirmation that the fear had become bigger than the room. Tisa stepped closer to the glass. The containment field shimmered again, but she stopped just short of it. "Then maybe the problem is not us." Valoria's thread slowed. Tisa continued, voice calm but cutting. "You keep saying we should not exist. You keep saying our cells should not work, our bodies should not function, our brains should not think. But we are standing right here, thinking, breathing, asking questions. So either we are broken in a way that somehow works perfectly." She looked directly at Valoria. "Or your understanding of biology is broken." The words did not sound loud. They did not need to. They moved through the laboratory with more force than any alarm. Meridian's internal currents froze. Gro's fingers stopped moving. Valoria stared at Tisa as if the human had just reached through the glass and touched the foundation of her mind. Nolan felt the shift before anyone spoke. Until that moment, the aliens had been looking at the humans as a contradiction. A thing that did not fit the equation. A dangerous exception. But Tisa had turned the equation around. She had made the scientists look at themselves. Not what is wrong with humans. What is missing from your science? Valoria slowly turned back to the projection. The two genetic maps spun in the air. Nolan's unstable sequence. Tisa's contradictory one. Both impossible by different routes. Both attached to living, breathing people. Her long fingers moved across the controls, but this time they did not tremble with panic. They moved with terrible precision. "Run expanded theoretical comparison," she said. Gro's head snapped toward her. "Valoria! Now!" The system obeyed. New models opened around the human data. Not diagnostic models. Foundational ones. Biology, chemistry, molecular physics, evolutionary adaptation, planetary environment, radiation exposure, mutation survival, immune plasticity, neural flexibility, cellular repair, reproductive viability. One by one, the system tested the same question from a different direction. What if the humans were not violating the laws? What if the laws were incomplete? Meridian moved closer to the display, their fear slowly transforming into focus. Include Earth's environmental parameters. Valoria added them. Gravity, radiation, oxygen density, pathogen diversity, climate instability, competitive biosphere, extinction cycles, predation pressure, geological violence, evolutionary bottlenecks, survival through catastrophe after catastrophe after catastrophe. The projection changed. The warning symbols did not vanish. They reorganized. Gro stared at the display. "Explain." Valoria's voice was quieter now. "The models are no longer rejecting human biology as non-viable." Nolan looked up. "What does that mean?" Valoria did not answer him first. She looked at Tisa. "It means your question was correct." The containment field still hummed. Gro still stood ready. Meridian still trembled with the aftermath of fear. But the room had changed. Tisa was no longer just the subject inside the chamber. She had become the first human to make alien science doubt itself. Valoria lowered her hand onto the command surface. "Release containment." Gro did not move. "Release it," Valoria repeated. "They are not the failure in the model." For a long second, nothing happened. Then Gro's fingers lifted. The shimmer around the chamber faded. The glass door opened with a soft hiss. Tisa stepped out slowly and stood beside Nolan. No alarms sounded. No systems failed. No impossible plague consumed the vessel. Two humans simply stood in the laboratory, alive in a way the galaxy had not been ready to explain. And Valoria looked at them, not with fear now, but with the first fragile edge of wonder. Valoria did not look at the humans for almost a full minute. She looked at the models. Not the first scan. Not the second scan. Not the warning symbols that had thrown the laboratory into fear. She looked at the deeper structures now unfolding across every display in Laboratory Bay 7, the hidden mathematical bones beneath biology itself. The system was no longer asking why humans were impossible. It was asking what law had been missing. That difference changed everything. Nolan stood beside Tisa outside the chamber, both of them silent now. The containment field had faded, but the memory of it remained in the room like a bruise. Only minutes earlier, they had been volunteers. Then anomalies. Then possible threats. Now the alien scientists were staring at them as if they had brought an entire universe into the laboratory by accident. Meridian moved through the projection slowly, their semi-transparent hand passing beneath streams of biological data. Their internal fluid had stopped churning wildly. The purple fear still remained at the edges, but teal currents were returning in narrow controlled spirals. Thought was replacing panic. These readings are not random, Meridian said. Valoria nodded without looking away. No. That is the most disturbing part. Grow stood behind them, no longer touching the emergency controls. His amber eyes had returned from hard orange to a steadier glow, but his body remained tense. He had accepted that Nolan and Tisa were not immediate threats. He had not accepted that the situation was safe. What are you seeing? He asked. Valoria expanded the projection. Earth appeared above the central workstation as a blue-white sphere surrounded by layers of environmental data. Radiation exposure. Atmospheric volatility. Microbial density. Extinction cycles. Oxygen concentration shifts. Climate collapses. Predation chains. Viral pressure. Genetic bottlenecks. Thousands of stress markers wrapped around the planet like invisible storms. Then human biology appeared beside it. The two images connected. Nolan's genetic structure. Tisa's genetic structure. Different patterns. Different contradictions. Same origin world. Same evolutionary battlefield. Valoria's threads glowed a strange violet-orange color that did not pulse with fear anymore. It pulsed with realization. Human DNA appears unstable because we have been judging it by biological standards developed from controlled worlds, she said. Most known intelligent species evolved under relatively stable environmental conditions. Their genetic systems prioritize preservation, accuracy, and low-risk replication. Tisa watched the projection carefully. And humans? Meridian answered, voice soft. Humans evolved on a world that kept trying to kill them. The words were simple. The room absorbed them slowly. Valoria moved her fingers through the air, and Earth's data intensified. Ice ages. Heat waves. Predator pressure. Famine cycles. Disease outbreaks. Impact events. Volcanic winters. Migration stress. Injury survival. Social adaptation. War. Cooperation. Grief. Memory. Learning under pressure. Your biology is not elegant, Valoria said. Not by galactic standards. It is not clean. It is not safe. It is not optimized for stability. Nolan gave a tense smile. That sounds insulting. It is not, Valoria said immediately. It may be the greatest survival architecture ever discovered. Nolan's smile vanished. Tisa looked at Valoria more sharply. The fungal researcher lifted Nolan's genetic map first. Your sample shows instability patterns that should create failure. But instead, the instability appears to allow flexible repair, rapid adaptation, and tolerance for internal error. Your cells do not avoid damage the way most species do. They survive it, correct around it, and continue. Then she lifted Tisa's map. Your sample shows contradiction. Competing biological instructions. Overlapping immune behaviors. Neural pathways that should interfere with themselves. But instead of collapse, the system uses conflict as a form of response expansion. It does not choose one solution. It prepares for many. Meridian's crests pulsed brighter. Human biology is not breaking the rules. It is operating inside a wider rule set. Grow's eyes narrowed. A rule set no one else has recorded. Yes, Valoria said. Silence followed. Not empty silence. Reverent silence. Tisa exhaled slowly. So we are not impossible. Valoria turned toward her. No, she said. You are possible in a way we did not know possibility could exist. The statement settled over Nolan like weight. He thought of Earth. Not as a scientific mystery. Not as a glowing projection above an alien workstation. He thought of crowded streets, hospital rooms, children running through rain, old people sitting in sunlight, workers coming home tired, parents cooking dinner, soldiers writing letters, strangers helping strangers after disasters. Ordinary life. Billions of ordinary lives. And somewhere above all of it, alien science had almost labeled that ordinary life impossible. How many humans are on Earth? Meridian asked. Tisa answered quietly. Around 8 billion. The laboratory changed again. Valoria's threads dimmed to pale violet. Gro's shoulders tightened. Meridian's internal fluid slowed until it looked almost still. 8 billion. The number expanded the discovery beyond anything the room could hold. 2 humans could be a mystery. 8 billion was a civilization. 8 billion meant cities, languages, memories, families, wars, songs, grief, ambition, love. 8 billion minds operating through biology that galactic science had just failed to explain. 8 billion living proofs that the universe was larger than its own textbooks. Gro spoke first. If hostile powers learn this, they will not treat Earth as a research subject. Valoria closed her eyes. Meridian's crests lowered. Tisa looked from one alien to another. What would they treat us as? Gro did not soften the answer. A resource. A threat. A weapon. A disease. A miracle. Different civilizations would choose different names. Most would mean danger. Nolan stepped forward. We're just people. That would not protect you, Gro said. The brutal honesty cut deeper than fear. Valoria turned back to Earth's projection. The blue planet rotated slowly in the sterile alien light, unaware that its existence had become a secret too large for the galaxy to safely know. Our first duty is no longer analysis, Valoria said. It is protection. Meridian nodded slowly. If Earth is exposed before the Council understands this discovery, the planet could become the center of scientific exploitation, military intervention, religious panic, or containment doctrine. Containment? Nolan asked. Gro looked at him. Quarantine at planetary scale. Tisa's face hardened. You mean prison? Gro did not deny it. Valoria's fingers moved across the controls, pulling up galactic records. Earth's survey classification appeared in the air: low priority, early contact biological world, limited access permitted, coordinates logged in standard research archives. Suddenly, those ordinary words looked dangerous. Every connected database. Every navigation chart. Every research vessel. Every curious empire with enough clearance to search. Earth was visible. And visibility had become a threat. Valoria stared at the planet. For the first time, her voice did not sound like a scientist describing data. It sounded like someone accepting responsibility. Then we have very little time. Nolan looked at her. Time for what? Valoria raised one trembling finger and touched Earth's projection. The blue planet flared softly beneath her hand. To make sure the universe does not find you before it is ready to understand you. Valoria opened the galactic archive and saw Earth sitting there like an unlocked door. One small blue world. One ordinary survey marker. One harmless classification tag buried inside a million other low-priority planets. Before today, that entry had meant nothing. A young civilization. Limited contact. Basic biological interest. No military value. No strategic importance. Now it looked like a disaster waiting to happen. Earth's coordinates glowed in the center of the laboratory projection, clean and precise. Anyone with proper research clearance could request the route. Any survey vessel could drift close enough to observe. Any empire with curiosity and ambition could discover the world where 8 billion humans lived without knowing they were the most dangerous scientific truth in the galaxy. Not dangerous because they wanted war. Dangerous because everyone else would want answers. Valoria's threads glowed steady violet now, but the calm was forced. Beneath the violet, pale white pulses moved like lightning trapped under skin. She understood the weight of the choice forming in front of her. Scientists preserved knowledge. They recorded it, shared it, defended it from ignorance. But some knowledge, revealed too early, became a weapon. Grow stepped beside her. His dark stone-like body filled the edge of the projection, his amber eyes locked on the glowing coordinates. Standard protocol requires immediate council notification, he said. Yes, Valoria replied. It also requires preservation of all raw data. Yes. And you are considering deletion. Valoria looked at Earth's tiny blue sphere. I am considering protection. Meridian moved to the communication station, their translucent body shimmering with tense blue-green light. Their internal currents had become narrow and controlled, no longer panicked but no longer peaceful either. If we erase coordinates without authorization, we violate archival law. If we leave them accessible, Valoria said, we may violate an entire species. Nolan and Tisa stood behind them, listening in silence. That silence hurt more than fear. They should not have been there for this. They should have stepped into a harmless scan, received meaningless medical numbers, and returned home with a strange story about alien equipment. Instead, they were watching three extraterrestrial researchers decide whether their planet would remain visible to the universe. Tisa's voice came quietly. Can you hide it? Valoria turned. Tisa did not look frightened now. She looked tired. The kind of tired that came when the mind had accepted something the heart had not caught up to yet. Can you actually hide Earth? Grow answered before Valoria could. From common charts, yes. From civilian routes, yes. From standard research indexes, yes. From military deep archives, not permanently. But enough to delay discovery. How long? Nolan asked. Years, Meridian said. Possibly decades. Longer if the Council seals the record after emergency review. Nolan looked at Earth's projection. Decades did not sound like forever. But it sounded like a chance. Valoria expanded the archival network. Lines of light spread through the laboratory, showing every database connected to Earth's survey file. Research logs. Navigation caches. Biological curiosity indexes. Early contact registries. Automated beacon summaries. Half-forgotten exploratory maps. Dozens of systems. Hundreds of mirrors. Too many doors. Not enough locks. We cannot simply delete the planet, Meridian said. The absence itself will create questions. Then we do not delete it like a mistake, Valoria said. We reclassify it as restricted contamination space. False radiation instability. Collapsed survey confidence. Navigation unreliability. Archive corruption. Enough bureaucratic noise to make every ordinary search turn away. Grow studied the network. A ghost classification. Yes. Tisa's eyes narrowed. You're going to lie. Valoria met her gaze. Yes. The honesty surprised everyone. Valoria stepped closer to the humans, her voice lower now. I will not pretend this is clean. I will not call it procedure. I will not hide behind protocol. We are going to bury your world under false warnings because the truth would bring ships, laboratories, soldiers, believers, profiteers, and frightened governments to your sky. Tisa looked down. Nolan's jaw tightened. And us? He asked. What happens to us? Meridian's crests lowered. You return home. With this in our heads? Yes, Valoria said. Nolan laughed once, hollow and sharp. Great. So we go back to rent payments, traffic, bad coffee, and pretending we didn't watch aliens erase Earth from space. Exactly, Grow said. Nolan stared at him. Grow's expression did not change. That ordinary life is what we are preserving. The sentence silenced him. Valoria turned back to the controls. Begin coordinate suppression. Meridian entered the first command. Grow authorized security routing. Valoria attached her highest research seal to the file. The system resisted immediately. Archival integrity warning. Valoria overrode it. Council notification required. Meridian rerouted it. Restricted classification not validated. Grow inserted emergency threat credentials. One by one, the doors began to close. Earth vanished from the civilian navigation grid first. Its name dissolved from the projection, replaced by a gray hazard marker. Then the biological survey index folded inward and sealed itself behind Black Authority encryption. Research vessel routes recalculated around the sector. Public star maps refreshed. Automated archives accepted the false contamination warning and pushed the update outward into the network. On the screens, Earth did not explode. It simply became harder to find. That was somehow more haunting. Nolan watched the blue dot fade behind layers of warning symbols. Will people on Earth notice? No, Meridian said. Your sky will look the same. Our satellites? Untouched. Our cities? Untouched. Our lives? Valoria paused. Then she said, changed only by what you now know. The final archive remained. The original survey file. Valoria placed all 4 hands over the crystalline control surface. Her threads brightened, violet and white, resolve and grief moving together beneath her skin. This action is unauthorized, the system warned. I know, Valoria said. Scientific record deletion is punishable by council tribunal. I know. Confirm final seal. Valoria looked once at Nolan. Then at Tisa. Then at the rotating image of Earth, small and fragile and impossible. Confirmed. The final coordinate disappeared. The laboratory screens went dark for one breath. When they returned, Earth was no longer listed as a living world. It was a restricted dead zone. A place no sane pilot would visit. A corrupted survey record. A warning buried beneath layers of official fear. A lie created to protect a deeper truth. 8 billion humans continued turning beneath ordinary clouds, unaware that the galaxy had just lost them on purpose. Tisa covered her mouth with one hand. Nolan did not move. Grow stepped away from the controls. Suppression complete. Meridian's internal current slowed into a quiet, sorrowful blue. Valoria stood before the darkened archive, looking suddenly smaller than she had before. It is done, she said. Earth is invisible. No one spoke. There was nothing large enough to say. Finally, Tisa asked, what do we tell people when we go home? Valoria turned toward her. You tell them nothing. Nolan's face hardened. That's your answer? That is the only answer that keeps them safe. Tisa's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. And if one day they find us anyway? Grow looked toward the sealed archive. Then we hope the universe has become wiser by then. Valoria stepped closer to both humans. For the first time, she did not look at them like specimens, anomalies, or even discoveries. She looked at them like people standing at the edge of a truth too heavy for any species to carry alone. You are not impossible, she said softly. You are evidence that existence is larger than fear, larger than theory, larger than every law we mistook for certainty. Nolan looked at the place where Earth's coordinates had been. So humanity stays hidden. For now, Valoria said. Tisa reached toward him, and Nolan took her hand. 2 ordinary humans stood in the center of an alien laboratory while the greatest secret in galactic history sealed itself around their homeworld. Outside the vessel, the stars burned unchanged. On Earth, children slept. Cities glowed. Oceans moved under moonlight. People argued, laughed, worked, prayed, dreamed, survived, and woke to another morning without ever knowing that every map in civilized space had just forgotten them. And somewhere far above that impossible blue world, 3 alien researchers stood guard over the silence. Not because humanity was weak, but because the universe was not ready for what humans proved.